What was it like starting in the music business? I mean, when I first started a long time ago? Oh, well, I was a teenage, I was a drummer, so I was just interested in playing the drums. I didn't really think I was going to be in the music business or, you know, do anything other than just playing small bars and things like that. So that's all I really cared about back then, was just playing the drums. So that's all I did for a little while. It's just always come up to me and subconsciously when I was younger. But when I was an upholsterer, I was an apprentice at an upholstery shop in Detroit, and there was some fabric I was upholstering, and I had 3 staples in it just to sort of temporarily attach it. And it just sort of hypnotized me. I thought this is the minimal amount of staples that I could put into this fabric to keep this in place. You know, left, right, and center. It's done. I mean, if you were going to minimally do a job like this would be the most easiest way to do it. 3 staples. You couldn't do any less. So I started to be hypnotized by that idea that 3 became the minimal amount of doing everything. You know, 3 chords in a song, or if I would write a verse, it would be 3 lines in the verse. So I was doing that with everything. I worked on sculpture, I worked on furniture. I used to put poetry inside of the furniture that I upholstered, and I would base that around the number 3 as well. So it just sort of encompassed my whole life. Then I realized you couldn't have 3 wives at the same time. You could only have 1 at a time, so I'm still working on it. And when you work with a band on a record, and you write or record, you don't really tell the other people what to do. You know, the bass player, the drummer, whatever's going on, people are all in together. You're like a little platoon, like a little army battalion or something, and you're all brothers, and you work on it together, brothers and sisters, and I mean, I wouldn't walk over and say, here's your part, and here's your part. This is what you play, this is what you play, this is my song. You know, I never really did that in a band. It's a collaborative effort between all of you. So to work on songs that were my own, basically for the first time, this was the first time I had hired guns coming in to play, a fiddle player, a pedal steel player, and I had to tell them what to do. When you hire someone to come in for a session, they're waiting there to be asked, you know, what would you like me to do? That's what makes it extremely different. And to produce your own music, and to also tell musicians what to play is a very strange place to be. You have to be careful. It can be an egotistical place to exist, you know. You have to not get any buzz from telling people what to do. You have to get any buzz from that at all. It has to be about what the music needs the most, and that's just what needs to happen. So that's what made it completely different.
What was it like jamming with the Edge and Jimmy Page and Mike and Live?
It was extremely odd at first because I didn't know what kind of film it was going to be. It was a little bit scary. I thought early on you'd be pulling out and not being part of it because I didn't really know where it was headed. But once we got together, the Edge and Jimmy Page, I think was his name, we really bonded as friends, and we found a love of blues and punk music that tied us all together. The idea of the film was just to get 3 guitar players, any guitar players will do, in a room, and let's talk about this instrument. Why is it so popular? It's very strange why that instrument is so popular the world over. Why isn't it the clarinet or the sitar? You know, it's very odd to even consider what the reasons are behind it. I don't think it's something we can actually figure out and ascertain, but that was the point of the movie, was to sort of at least talk about it. You know, at least we talked about it once. It's funny to cover somebody else's song. Sometimes you can cover it in a way that it changes how you yourself feel about the song. And, my band White Stripes did the cover of Dolly Parton's Jolene, and it became such a different song for me. It meant so much more to me and how it was presented in that band. It's very difficult for me to go up and play that song now. I don't think I could really do that. It wouldn't feel right. There's other songs I covered back then, off kilter, in the middle of a show. Come up when we play shows now, because they didn't really strike a chord with me or the audience or anything. It's just something to do to get to the next song, you know. But some ones sort of become sacred somehow, and you can't perform them again. I thought I liked the blues. You know, when I was a teenager, I thought I liked the blues, sort of like Howlin' Wolf and certain things that were coming through, not just the American music, but mostly the English bands like the Yardbirds and Cream that were sort of re-educating Americans about their roots. So I got to that sort of through those rock and roll bands and sort of thought, yeah, I like the blues, you know, and I like certain things like that, Howlin' Wolf or Muddy Waters. But it wasn't until I was a later teenager when I listened to people like Sunhouse and Charlie Patton and Blind Willie McTell that really made me rethink everything, that I could actually write music for myself and not just to try to get something across on stage or on a little recording or something. I could actually write music for myself because that's what they were doing. And in a totally different generation, in a different time period, in a different culture, that it was still possible. So those people spoke to me later on. We made, I guess the first album I made as a whole album was the White Stripes' first album, and it sounded, when I was finished, I said to Meg, this sounds very Detroit. This album sounds like Detroit to me. And it still does sound like Detroit to me. I don't know what that is, I don't know what ingredients that is, or what tones, or what frequencies are on there. But it does seem like an album. I don't think it's a great album or anything, but it's an album that sounds like something that the NC5 or the Stooges would do. That in the same vein as that. It seems like it comes from this, we're all drinking the same water, whatever that is, and that later grew on to something else for me as a songwriter. But the first steps to recording sounded very much Detroit, where I was very proud of it. That's all I ever wanted to be was in that zone, you know. And it just took on a different life later on. The crowd tells me what to do, you know. I try to listen to what the crowd's asking for. It can be very subconscious, you know, and it can be out loud, you know. But it's better, I think a show has more life and electricity to it if you let the crowd tell you what to do, instead of you performing something that they have to sit and be quiet and listen to. I think everyone has to be involved in it.
Yeah, and speaking of great artists that you collaborated with, what was it like working with the same kind of
It's everything you think it was. I'm not lying. It was just a way for me to meet girls. No, it was when we were recording the album, like I was saying earlier, I produced the album myself as well. So when you're writing the songs and you're recording them and you're producing it yourself, you're putting on a lot of different hats. So you can get into ruts. You can start doing the same thing every time. We did this song that way. We used that microphone on the drums. We'll use that microphone on the next song on the drums. And you have to keep every once in a while shaking it off and shaking the whole thing up, going and messing up the whole jigsaw puzzle and starting over again. Because you'll fall into ruts. And one day I said, well, whatever songs we record today with these guys that are here, let's record the same songs tomorrow with all female musicians. And then do the exact same opposite the next day and see what happens. And then at the end, we ended up mixing both bands together. And it was a technique to record songs differently. Because the vibe in the room changes, you know. If I brought my, mother in and sat her down in the room while I'm recording a song, I'm going to attack the song differently, just to have her sitting there. And same thing if you brought, 3 Vietnam vet soldiers and sat them in the corner too, your vibe in the room is going to be totally different. So of course, if you have everybody of the same gender in one room, the vibe is extremely different. And people think maybe that doesn't make that much difference, but it really does, especially if you're recording live music. You perform differently based on what the environment is, if you record outside or if you record in a warehouse or in a studio. So all those things make a lot of difference. By the time we came to going on tour, I thought that would be a great way for it not to be a boring solo artist standing there with some boring people standing behind me playing it just like the record. There's really no point in doing that. So a challenge to me would be to play with 2 different bands and have 2 different sets with them and play songs differently, the same songs with different styles, and see if I can make myself work harder, make something different happen. Turns out it didn't make any difference. People still don't like the songs. The pretty girl with the black hair keeps getting ignored, I'm sorry. Yeah, Wanda Jackson, I don't know if you know, but how many of you know, but she was maybe the first female ever to sing rock and roll music. And Elvis Presley was her boyfriend for a short time, and he convinced her to do rock and roll. She had been doing country music for a while. They didn't even have a name for it at the time. You should do this kind of music that's happening right now. So she may have been the very first female to sing rock and roll. One of her first hits was called Let's Have a Party. And I had heard this band of 5, 6, 7, 8 do it, this Japanese garage rock band do Let's Have a Party years ago. And then I saw the movie Dead Poets Society, and in one scene, 2 kids make crystal radio, and they finally hone it in and they pick up a radio wave and they hear Wanda's Let's Have a Party in that movie. I thought, oh, I didn't know that was an old song. I thought that Japanese band had written it. That turned me on to Wanda, and I got to, about time, years later, I had built my own studio, and Wanda had called, and they wanted to do one of those albums, that a lot of people do nowadays, where every song is a different artist, and they do a little collaboration, it's a duet, and do it on every song, which I think are sort of useless albums. I mean, they don't really do anything for anybody. And all those compilation records are just kind of boring, they don't really do anything. So I asked her, so why don't you come and let's do a single for Third Man Records label that I produce songs for. So let's do a single and then see what happens. So we did two songs. We did Amy Winehouse's song, I Know That You're No Good, and I don't know what else the other flip side was. We ended up doing about 5-6 songs that day. And I said, well, let's make it a whole album. We've got 6 songs now. Let's come back here in a week or so, and let's do a whole record. So we ended up doing a whole album that way, which felt really good. It's very much a challenge to work with people in their 70s and 80s. They have a totally different outlook on life, especially her. She was there before they even called it rock and roll. You can imagine how ridiculous it is for me to produce her and say, let's try this. I mean, before I was even born, you were been doing this for 20 years. So. But I think something good comes out of that when people of different age groups, different genders, different cultures come together and push each other to try something else. Maybe something new will happen. He's asking, you're asking do I struggle to find a way to be individual as a musician? You were talking about the edge earlier, someone was talking about the edge in that movie. I remember when I was younger, my brother was a guitar player, and he was talking, we're listening to a U2 song on the radio, and at the time I was maybe 12 years old or something, and I thought, well, the chords aren't heavy enough, And he was telling me, well, but he has his own style. Nobody else does what he does with that, what do you call it, infinite, his style is called infinite guitar or something like that. But the way the notes just keep rolling off of each other over and over again. He actually has a pickup that feeds back upon itself on his guitar back then. I said, well, he has his own style. Nobody else can do that. Nobody can touch that. And you see that with certain guitar players like Tom Morello, Rage Against the Machine, or Jeff Beck. But you can't sit down and plan that stuff. You can't sit down and say, with a pencil and paper and say, this is going to be how I'm going to be an individual. I'm going to sound like this. I'm going to use this kind of amp. I'm going to dress like this. You can't really do that. It's kind of ridiculous. I mean, they become image for the sake of image. It has to start with something natural that only occurs to you, and that I think it's something you think that you're the only person in the world who feels that way. Still to this day, when I record a guitar part, I still feel like I'm the only one who wants to do it this way, who wants it to sound like this. The way, if I turn the different knobs on the guitar, or the reverb, or something like that, I still feel any other guitar player who came in here, he wouldn't set the knobs like this. You get in a mindset where you say, well, they're wrong. This is how it's supposed to be. You turn that. You just have that naturally inside of me to individualize yourself without even thinking about what other people would, how they'd perceive it. So I think that's what has to happen that way for you naturally. What's my writing process? Well, it happens, it's different for every song. You have to sort of, let it happen accidentally in a way. You have to sort of let the instruments, sometimes I want to sit down at a piano and start writing something, but that's not how the song should be performed, that's not how the song should be recorded. The piano was just what happened to be in the room that day. Yeah, you have to figure out what the song is telling you to do. That the song sort of ends up telling you, actually, this is only going to be fiddle and acoustic guitar by the time you record it. That's a very difficult thing to do. You have to sort of listen to the song and let it tell you what to do. You have to really throw away a lot of your own opinions. Sometimes people would say, well, my band is known for being a folk band, so we can't have electric guitars on this song, And they'll push the song into being in a place it's not supposed to be because they told it what to do. When you really should do the opposite. The song should tell you what to do, and it should tell you where to put it. And then it has its own personality, and it has its own life after that.
With the White Stripes getting bigger and bigger and the Raconteur is getting bigger and bigger, what led you to go to Third Man Records and start and begin working with that kind of era when all these other bands were going around? getting
On
huge?
Third Man Records, it started, I wanted to buy a building in Nashville because I needed a place to store all my gear. It was all over the place, and I needed a building just to put my gear in. Once I got that place, it also had a photo studio wall and a curved cyclotron wall. I thought, well, this would be nice. We can take photos here too sometimes. And there was some offices in there, and I thought, well, you know, it might be nice to re-release my older vinyl records, which are out of print. Because I really don't like when records are out of print. I think that's kind of ridiculous. I mean, records should always be in print, whatever they are. And so we started to do that, and then things snowballed and snowballed. We opened a store, we opened a dark room in the back, then we put in a live stage, we put on live shows, and things just completely snowballed. And now we have a live to acetate studio behind the stage, so live bands can now record direct to vinyl in front of the crowd, and the crowd can watch on a monitor the needle cutting into the vinyl while you're watching a live show, which is the only one in the world now, which is completely compelling to me. I want to be there all the time now, just stay there and watch this process happen, because it's just so unique and very difficult to pull off the live show. But I think maybe what I was saying before, I didn't tell it what to do. I didn't say this is what this place is going to be or what this record label is going to be. I have no business interest in making money off of independent music or something like that. It just all snowballed on its own. You know, when you just want to make things exist that didn't already exist, your brain just sort of makes it happen, and pretty soon you find yourself doing those things. I played guitar when I was younger. My brothers had guitars around, so I was playing their guitars, not really knowing what I was doing. And it's kind of funny, you know, I don't play, like say bar chords, I don't use my second and third fingers for bar chords. You're supposed to use those, but I only use these two fingers, because I taught myself how to play. And I remember when I met Pete Townsend from The Who, and I was saying the first song I learned how to play was I Can't Explain by The Who. And I said, yeah, but I told Pete, yeah, but except I play it wrong. I play it like these, with these fingers. He goes, that's exactly how I do it. So, it's good to know. She says 2 more questions and she's lost. How it came about making a James Bond song? That was sort of an accident. I didn't really know if I wanted to do that. It's a very divisive thing to get involved with. I mean, it's sort of like writing a new theme for Star Trek or something. You know, there's so many die-hard fans that no matter what you do, they're just going to hate it. So I was apprehensive at first, but the problem was they wanted Amy Winehouse to sing it, and Mark Ronson was going to produce it. So she wasn't able to record it at the time. You know, just physically wasn't able to. And so they were in desperate need of someone to replace that situation. So they asked me, and they originally wanted me to produce for somebody else, like someone to sing. Maybe Alicia Keys. I said I'll produce and write, and Alicia Keys can sing it. And I sent the demo to the Broccoli family, which owned James Bond and also invented broccoli. The demo had me singing on it, so they said, well, what about a duet? I like your voice on it. What if you both sang Bond? But they never had a duet in Bond history, so we did that that way, and Alicia came to Nashville and we recorded that. It was very fast, and they were very under the gun. They only had a couple weeks left before they had to have it finished, but it was a great way for me to sneak in things that would never have been approved had we had 12 months. If I had turned that song in 12 months before that, I think it would have never been allowed to be put in the film, you know, because there's like a lot of elements in it that aren't very pop and not very catchy. They're very mysterious and very sort of melancholy, which I think are not the point of some of those hits. But I think it's something the instruments used in there, I still feel very, very powerful. I always really like that. Am I supposed to do the Beatles joke where I turn around at Iceland? How do I find everyone? It's beautiful. It's very beautiful here. It really is. And the first couple of times I came here, I never got to see anything. They come in to play a show and see a bunch of redheaded women and leave. You know? That was it. Now I get to spend a little bit more time here, and it's very, very beautiful. You know, I love. You guys invented sodium, I think, right? Wonderful what you've done for the world.
with Mr. John White.